Scott Woolweaver and Lynn Salmonson are joining me in studio today. Well, partly in studio. We have Lynn sitting next to me and Scott via Zoom. We have a lot to talk about. We have a lot of music to talk about. And right from the start, welcome to you both. Great to have you in studio and remote.
Thank you.
Talk about, we'll get into a little history of you both as musicians and kind of paths that you've taken. But let's talk about how long the two of you on viola and, I should say on piano and viola, how long you two have performed together. And Lynn, maybe we'll start with you.
So right off the bat, I get to date myself, right? We met in grad school here in Boston at School of Fine Arts. We were assigned a chamber music class together, meaning it was Scott on viola, myself, and a clarinetist. And we were getting a few pieces ready, rehearsing and performing. Scott and I continued from that day, from that first year working together. And off and on, you know, sometimes our careers take slightly different directions and we don't get to play as much as other years, but it's been great. It's been a long time and it's been a lot of fun the whole time.
Now, Scott, I'm sure you'd say the same thing. Feelings
Sure,
are mutual, I assume.
One thing Lynn left out was when that was that we met. It was the early 1980s. I'm not afraid.
That was intentional, Lynn, was it not?
That's all right.
When you find someone that you enjoy playing with, you'll go to great lengths to keep playing. So yeah, it has been a labor of love for many decades.
You two play so well together. I was listening to a few bagatelles.
We've gotten that kind of comment a lot, that people say we seem to enjoy playing with each other. And it's true. We have played together. We enjoy playing together in any context, from a church service at Lynn's church to an assisted living center recital to a formal recital at a library or anywhere, really.
Talk about classical music and the appreciation of classical music. Obviously, as classical musicians, you really need to know how to read music.
Pianists and string players too, but pianists usually start pretty early, around age 6 or 7. And I was fascinated by a neighbor's piano in their basement. I went down and diddled at it every chance I got, and my mom signed me up for lessons with the piano teacher nearby, and I loved it from the start. Absolutely loved it. I loved the theory part. I liked practicing, all the things that kids complain about, or adults, why they stopped learning. I just loved it, and I kept playing, knew that I wanted to do something with music for the rest of my life.
Scott, let's talk about your background, your instrument, which I understand is an older instrument, quite vintage.
Yes, my viola was made in Vienna in 1737. The string instruments themselves were developed probably in the mid-1500s. But it is a very old and very rare instrument. But I want to sort of add to what Lynn has been saying, in that there was a study done. I don't remember who did the study, but the result of the study was that most professional musicians have practiced their instrument 20,000 hours by the time they're 20 years old.
Wow.
And I did a little analysis, all the practicing I did as a kid and going to music camp, and that would include 2 years of college, where my teacher insisted that all of his students practice 5 hours every day. And I came up with a little bit over 20,000 hours of practicing. But as we develop as musicians, sort of our curiosity comes out. And I want to point out one thing that that Lynn and I do is when we play a recital, we like to make a nice mixture of familiar composers like Bach and Handel and Brahms, and composers that might not be familiar to everyone. You mentioned the Bagatelles. You were talking about a composer named Gerald Finzi, who is an English musician, who not exactly a household name in the musical world, but we try to mix it up, and we're always looking for new pieces to make balanced, attractive programs.
Well, let's talk about, I'll turn to Lynn, but you could address this as well. But Lynn, we'll start with you. What can folks expect at the Thomas Crane Public Library? You will be there on April 7th from 3 to 4 p.m. What kind of program will the patrons see?
It's a program specifically designed for that day. Perhaps a little bit lighthearted because spring is finally coming. But we're starting with a Bach piece, Gamba Sonata, to lay the groundwork, if you will. Each piece that we do talk a little bit about the composer, about the piece, maybe how it was written, or what its mode is, or energy.
So you set the stage for folks.
Right. And then we move on. We have a newer composer, a piece that was written in 1975, fairly new compared to 1650 and 1700, by Arvo Pärt, a Czech composer. And then some other classical and romantic, good solid viola literature, and some borrowed. The Rachmaninoff piece that we're doing is actually written for a singer, a vocalist written for a vocalist. And we'll be playing that on viola and piano.
Scott, when folks talk or think about classical music, often they think of pieces that were written centuries ago. Clearly, that's not always the case.
Again, to echo what Lynn said, we have music from a span of probably 250 years, from Bach up until the present day, and also from many different countries. As Lynn said, we are going to present one of those Finzi bagatelles. So we have British, American, Estonian, Czech, German. So you get a wide palette of music at one of our recitals.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining me here in studio. And you mentioned the bagatelles. We do have one that we will share with folks. Again, a great conversation. Thanks to you both for joining me, I would say, both in the studio and remotely.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Mark.
Next, you get to hear what you would experience at a concert performed by Scott Woolweaver and Lynn Salmonson.